Becky, you want to start?
Sure. I'm Rebecca Medak. I'm Commissioner of 34G04. So I have Lafayette Elementary School in Lafayette Park. I go to about roughly Tennyson, Western Tennessee, the Broad Branch, Utah, Nebraska, and Morrison.
Hi everyone. My name is Abraham Clayman and I represent 34G01, which is Hawthorne and part of Barnaby Woods.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Commissioner Shanda Tuck-Garfield, and I represent ANC3 4G02. It's on the easternmost side of the district, and it's on the part of the district that includes Oregon Avenue, Military Road, and Utah. Thank you for coming.
From Louis 3G07, area bounded by Military, Reno, Nebraska.
Hello everybody, I'm Jerry Mallix, 3G05. My area is from Circle down to about Military, across to Broad Branch.
Hi, good afternoon and good evening everybody. My name is Dan Bradfield. I represent 3G06, which is Chevy Chase Circle, down Western, 41st to Military.
Okay, we have a quorum tonight, so we can conduct business. And the first order of business is to adopt our agenda. The agenda has been published on our website and on the Chevy Chase listserv. There have been some modifications that were published on the listserv today. And so that's the agenda that we're working from, the draft agenda. All those in favor of adopting the agenda? 7-0. All right. For community announcements, I have several. The first is that Jackson knows all about this because he was there as well, but there was a Ward 4 meeting for ANC commissioners and for community leaders this last Saturday. And this is an annual meeting that Councilmember Todd puts together, and he invited a number of the directors of various offices in the district to come to the meeting as well. And there was a good turnout. There were about 50 people, I guess, there. Is that about right, Jackson? And there were presentations by DCRA Director Bowling, DPW Director Shorter, ABRA Director Rusali, DDOT Director Marushian, MPD 4D Commander Malanpaz, and the Office of Planning was Deputy Director Stern. And just a couple of highlights from that I thought were particularly interesting. Director Musali talked about a noise hotline, which I was not aware of. And it's a number that you can call if any kind of business particularly is making noise that you can hear inside your house. He said if you can hear it inside your house, it's a violation regardless of what the meter reading might be. And so I'll put the number in the minutes as well. Director Marushian said that they're in the process of preparing a priority list for street repairs. I know there have been a lot of instances of street repairs we've called to their attention. That priority list will rank all of them from 0 to 100, with the ones at the lowest end requiring the most urgent repairs. He said that they're going to have that list within the next 2 or 3 weeks, and that we should pay attention to when it comes out and see if we have any comments or thoughts about it. The other thing that he mentioned was, again, that anyone who wants to report a pothole should call 311 and put it into the system. He said that they would get to it within 72 hours, which would be impressive if that actually happens. The Office of Planning then reported on the comprehensive plan, and they had a couple of useful websites, I thought. One was a website to a better version of the framework element of the comprehensive plan than I had seen previously. It's the one that actually has the charts in it. You can follow along with it much easier, I thought. That website will be in our minutes as well. And then he pointed to a very useful interactive map that I also did not know about, where you can click on any property in the district and find out all the details about the property, who the owner is, what the valuation is, everything else. It's a really very, very good website.
And the zoning of the property?
The zoning of the property, everything. It has everything on there. And then I also spoke with Councilmember Todd at the end of the meeting about our couple of particular priorities. One is a community center, which we're all very acutely aware of. And it is on his list to talk to the mayor about for her budget priorities, and so we're really hopeful that that's going to happen. The other thing is I talked to him about our testimony that we gave at the DC Water Oversight hearing about CRIAC, and he is 100% on board with doing something, and probably something like the kind of fund that we suggested to pay down the CRIAC charges for those who need it most. So it was a very useful meeting, I thought. The next announcement is with regard to the Carnegie Neighborhood Lecture. I don't know whether you're familiar with this, but Carnegie holds a series of lectures, 2 in the spring and 2 in the fall, that are designed for the community. And the one that is coming up is going to be on March 22nd at 6:30 at their Broad Branch campus. And the title of it is When Earth Attacks, Causes and Consequences of a Tectonic Planet, which should be interesting. Then finally, we could all find out what all the CRIAC funds we've been paying are actually being used for. Because also on the 22nd, March 22nd, from 1 to 2:30, DC Water is having the grand opening, I guess, of their Clean Rivers Tunnel under the Anacostia. And it's going to be at RFK Stadium, and you can go out, and I think you're going to be able to actually see some of the workings of this tunnel there. So it's an opportunity to see what we've been paying for all this time. We're going to be paying for it for a long time. Okay, any other announcements, Dan?
Yep.
Here?
None for me.
Kevin? That's great. Okay, we'll go to community announcements. Ian or Phil, whichever one of you is going to speak.
I'll see you in Mike this time.
Okay.
All right, good evening, everyone. Can everybody hear me? All right, great. My name is Phil McCauley. I serve as the Ward 4 liaison in the mayor's office. I'm here with Ian Maggard, who serves as the Ward 3 liaison. A couple of updates from our end. As always, for the back table, we have our weekly newsletter. So be sure to grab a copy. It just keeps you updated what's going on in our administration and across the district as it relates to programs and initiatives and also events. So please grab a copy. If you want to be subscribed to our listserv, just provide me with your email address and I'll put you on the list so that way you can get this weekly in your email box. A couple key updates. This Thursday is the mayor's 4th State of the District address. So it will be actually held right down the road at UDC. It will begin at 5:30. So please be there ahead of time. Again, that's this Thursday at UDC's Theater of the Arts specifically, and that will begin at 5:30. So big event, so please come on out. You can actually RSVP. The flyer is actually in our toolkit, so again, grab a copy and RSVP for it.
Do you know what building it is?
Yeah, UDC's Theater of the Arts. Yeah. So I know we changed our location, so that's why we want to make sure everybody has an updated version. In addition, today, actually a big announcement, the mayor launched DC Infrastructure Academy. So this would be a public-private partnership between DC government, some of the utility companies, unions, university, again with the private sector. So Mayor Bowser invested $16 million towards this particular program, and this will kind of enable the youth to spearhead some of the infrastructure jobs that are they have a huge gap in. So this will supply those resources in terms of workforce development training and other programs for the youth to participate in to kind of close that gap as it relates to infrastructure projects. So be on the lookout for that as it relates to more information. We'll be sure to email you guys some more information regarding the actual program. But we launched that today. Pretty big investment because, as you know, the mayor also launched SolarWorks DC, DC Quick Packs and Energy program, just to kind of provide more resources to workforce development in a more sustainable development field. So. Also, I think that's the biggest thing as far as the two updates. Ian, am I missing anything? Say the two biggest things. Some other updates. Last Friday, the mayor launched crime cards, which is another interactive public crime map application to assist DC residents by providing more data visualizations of crime locations across all 8 wards. So that
What's that called again, Phil?
crime cards. So that would actually
What?
cards.
Cards?
Yeah, crime cards. So that would actually replace the DC crime map that's already in place. So it's a little better, more improvement in terms of like the interactive map. So you can actually go to that website. crimemap.dc.gov. So again, that's crimemap.dc.gov. Regards to the updates, that's all. I can take any questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Jackson?
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Jackson Carnes. I'm with Councilmember Todd's office. I'm the Director of Constituent Services. A few updates from our office. As you know, Winmageddon was just a couple weeks ago, and I, along with the rest of Councilmember Todd's team, were driving around Ward 4. There were several down trees, down wires, street signs missing. So if you have any of those, particularly signs missing and down wires, please let me know. I'm happy to work on those. Legislatively, Councilmember Todd, the final vote was on his Senior Dental Service Program Act of 2017. It was just this past week, and that's a grant-based program for low-income seniors for dental services. And in addition, a couple community events coming up that Councilmember Todd's hosting is block captain training tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. That's going to be at the 4th District Police Station. And that's right on the other side of the park, right by the Walmart. The address is 6001 Georgia Avenue Northwest. And in addition, Councilmember Todd's going to be hosting the first annual Easter egg roll on March 31st. That's going to be at 9 a.m. and that's going to be at Walter Reed on the actual campus. So you can enter at Walter Reed at Georgia and Butternut.
Upstage the White House Easter roll this year?
Well, let's hope so. So that's what I have for tonight.
Oh, sorry, Jason.
Yes.
What's the date again and the time for the Easter egg roll?
Yes, it's March 31st at 9 a.m. at Walter Reed. Great, thank you.
Okay, any community announcements? Anyone have anything they would like to announce? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chevy. My name is Con Hitchcock. I happen to live in this ANC, and I'm also here on behalf of Isabel Dabo, who was... Oh, sure.
Con Hitchcock, and I live in this ANC, and I'm here on behalf of Isabel Thabo, whose application appeal to the BZA was on the agenda that was posted on your website, but I see it is not listed on the agenda. She asked me to be here to speak on her behalf. She has a prior conflict, so I was just curious since it was not on the agenda.
We took it off the agenda, so it's not on the agenda. As I told Isabel, we took it off the agenda.
Okay, will it be put back on the agenda?
No, I don't think so. We decided it's not something that the ANC needs to address.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, any other community announcements? All right, we'll go then to Rochelle Howard, who's from the Office of Police Complaints, and this follows up, Jerry, you want to take it on?
Sure. We've had a couple of presentations over the past 2 or 3 months on the NEAR Act. One was from community advocates, and another one was touched upon at a meeting 2 back by Second District Commander Grisham, I believe. And at that meeting, He suggested that we reach out to the office that Ms. Howard represents to get some more information about the data that's collected or the data that's supposed to be collected through the NEAR program. So I think she's going to be able to speak to some of that today.
So hi everyone, my name is Rochelle Howard. I'm the Deputy Director for the Office of Police Complaints. Mr. Tobin, Michael Tobin is the Executive Director, and so he got this request. And we of course wanted to come out and answer any questions you have about the NEAR Act and anything about what we do in the office. So I'll explain a little bit about what our office does and our structure and how we're set up so that everyone's familiar with the work that we are responsible for. I also did bring some of our brochures in English and Spanish about our services. I also brought a brochure on how citizens can view any BWC that they're in. They have to go to MPD for that, but we have the brochures to let them know how they can do that. And I also brought a couple copies of our latest use of force report, which came out in January. This is our first use of force report, which was created as a requirement in the NEAR Act. So you'll see that first full report of use of force in MPD, generally on 2017, but it also includes data on 2013, 14, 15, and 16 in comparison as best we can. So I'll explain what we do a little bit. We are the DC Office of Police Complaints. We have jurisdiction over the Metropolitan Police Department and the DC Housing Authority Police Department. We are an independent agency not under the mayor's authority. We have our own budget, we report to the council. Because we are district government employees, we are responsible for performance measures to the mayor, so we do comply with all those things. You know, how fast we're processing cases, things like that. But we do have independent authority. We are separate from MPD. We're not connected to MPD in any way. Our responsibility is to oversee the work that they do, receive complaints about officer misconduct, make policy recommendations on how MPD and the DC Housing Authority can better their practices. And now we also have more robust data requiring reports requirements that allow us to evaluate and audit MPD and the DC Housing Authority, audit and evaluate their data so that we can analyze it and report it independently from what MPD would do. So that's generally what we do. If anyone ever has a complaint about any interaction that they had with the Metropolitan Police Department or the Housing Authority Police Department, they can come into our office, which is at 14th and I, right above McPherson Square, literally right above McPherson Square. You can go online to policecomplaints.dc.gov and file your complaint there. You can also attach any photos you have, any statements you have. If you have photos on your phone or recordings of that interaction, you can attach it to your online complaint. You can fax it to us, you can mail it to us. Any which way you can get us the complaint, we will take it. And so our most continuous work is investigating those complaints from citizens. But we also do, as I said, policy recommendations. If we see trends in the misconduct that we're evaluating, or if we see trends in the data that we now have authority over, we'll report on that as well. Also near and dear to my heart, because I manage the program, is mediation. We do conduct mediations between the officers and complainants if we feel that's best for that situation. We screen all cases for mediation to see if there's a misunderstanding and how that interaction happened, whether there's misconduct or not. If there was misconduct, potentially having a trained mediator facilitate a conversation between the officer and the complainant can help the officer understand how that situation made the complainant feel, and vice versa. If there wasn't misconduct and we feel there's a misunderstanding, we can still hold a mediation to help the complainant understand why the officer, in his opinion, felt he had to do what he had to do. And so we have a mediation program where we hire independent mediators. They're not our staff. We actually pay to have mediators come in and to have the neutrality for that, for the mediation. And then it's also confidentially protected by law. No one from the office sits in there, so it gives the parties legal confidentiality that I can uphold in court to make sure that their discussions are confidential, so it's in their best interest. So it's a huge overview of everything our little office of 23 people does every day, but more importantly, the NEAR Act. And so Mr. Tobin was a good part of insight in creating the NEAR Act. He testified a lot, he was consulted a lot in creating the NEAR Act. He's been with the agency since November 2014 when all that started. A little bit before Mr. Tobin got here, the office made a recommendation about body-worn cameras. And I'm thankful to say that MPD has complied with all those recommendations that we put out in one of our policy recommendations in 2014. And so that impetus allowed us to testify to how we could use the BWC data and things like that in the NEAR Act. And again, Mr. Tobin testified in all the opportunities that he was asked of to talk about how we could use a lot of that data. So the most important 2 reports, because I know you're interested in data, that came out of the NEAR Act was a requirement to report on the body-worn camera data. That was generally what it said. And since the enactment of the NEAR Act on June 30th, 2016, we have done that. And every mid-year report since, and every annual report, and we don't have it here, I didn't bring the annual report, because we're going to do a mid-year report in a couple weeks, but every mid-year report on the first week of April, and every end-of-year report by October 30th every year, reports on the data that we see from BWC, how it affects our allegations, whether or not it affects complainant compliance, and then MPD compliance with the requirements of BWC. So for example, if we see that 60% of the cases that we review that have BWC, the officer is turning it on too late, or he's turning it off too early, we note that compliance rate with those requirements, things like that. So I don't know if there's any questions about that. So we are required to only report on BWC once a year, we do it twice a year, so we're exceeding that requirement. The other most direct reporting requirement for us that came out of the NEAR Act is to report on the use of force. And our first report was due December 2017, and we published it in January. Of no fault of our own, we do get the data from MPD. So it took us a while to get the data. I have a research analyst. He started working with MPD last April to start collecting prior years back to 2013 data. We figure out what data we need. We figure out what data MPD has. And my one research analyst works with the entire Metropolitan Police Department to report on all of the reported use of force incidents that happened in 2017, and then he asked for a measurable amount of comparable data from 2013 to 2016 to see trends in increases or decreases over the years. And so you have those numbers. Generally, in 2017, use of force by Metropolitan Police Department increased by 36%. We just report the data. Why, how, or what, we don't know. We just receive the data, we audit it, we evaluate and analyze the statistics. I believe there's some misconception that we are to report on stop and frisk data. That is not true. We don't report on that. That's not a requirement of us. MPD has actually put out a recent report on their own stop and frisk data, as it is their requirement of the NEAR Act to do so, and that was put out on February 19th. It was also discussed extensively with the council and the deputy mayor about that report that MPD put out on their use stop and frisk data up through 2015 is the report that they put out on their own data. And then the deputy mayor for public safety and justice was asked about that by the council because it had come out. MPD was asked about it in their performance hearing as well. It's not our product, we're not involved in it. We don't have any analysis of it. We are looking at it to see if there are recommendations that we could make, because it seems, as the council has provided, they're not happy with the data that has been put out. So it's our job to look at anything that comes out and decide if there are policy recommendations on how they can make that report better, and so we're doing that now. We did put out a policy recommendation in January? September? Yes. Okay, so in September 2017, no, 2017. September 2017, we put out a policy recommendation. We were starting to see a lot of trends in our cases where police officers were not getting consent for searches, and we've made a policy recommendation on if they were to do that, as they should, and how they should do that. If they did it in the way that we asked them to, which is a form and asking certain required information that we suggest, they will have accurate stop and frisk data that they can then report in a way that's meaningful to people, unlike what they have now. So, or at least that's what the council's not happy with what's put out. And then it's retroactive, right? So if they were to comply with the consent search for anyone they stopped and frisked and asked the questions that we've recommended in that report, and all of our reports are online, policecomplaints.dc.gov. You can go look to see what the specific recommendations are. That would actually give MPD the specific tool to be able to collect that information anytime they do stop and frisk somebody. And so that's what we do as the oversight entity. And when we see these trends, we try to assist in the expertise that we have to make the recommendations so that MPD operates within the best practices comparable to the nation. I don't know if you have any questions or if I have anything else to explain, but I'd be more than happy.
Just out of curiosity, do your statistics also include use of force towards family pets?
Yes, there is animal information in the use of force report. There's a whole page on animal information on how if animals were shot, hit, and if they survived. So the thing that I have to caveat with is this is not our data. We get the data from MPD, and it's only information that MPD has provided us and that MPD has reported. And so you'll see in the back of the booklet and online, if you look at the electronic copy, that we made eight recommendations on how this data can be more reliable and how this data can be more consistent. It's neither of those right now to any length that we can validate. But I only have one research analyst. They have a whole statistics department. But we believe if they follow those 8 recommendations, for example, things like making it electronic and not hard copy. They have 2 different types of use of force forms that sometimes are filled out, sometimes are not, and it's a little bit confusing to officers of when they should fill that out. If they combine it to one form with specific information, the data that's needed to be collected or that we think will be useful for them could be collected in a way that's consistent and verifiable. And so hopefully they have started making some of those recommendations. They are putting the use of force incident form electronically. It's submitted electronically now, so before the report was even out, they followed that recommendation. So hopefully if they do so with the other 7 recommendations by the end of the year, when we collect this data over the year, we will see more reliable and accurate data that we can make analysis and recommendations on.
Thank you for coming. It's been very informative, and I haven't had an opportunity to read your report yet on use of force.
There's tons of them, so I just only brought one.
But, okay. But I definitely will go online. But I have 2 questions. One, you mentioned that the increase of force had gone up by 37% in the city. Did you break that data, or your office break that data down by quadrant in the city in the various areas? Okay.
It's broken down by district, ward, by who, on to who, by type of force, type of action by the person that received force, all these different comparative, we call it comparative analysis, so you can see what that use of force data is compiled of. So there's all kind of analytics in there that break it down, so you can see what comparables were developed in certain types of use of force.
Okay, thank you. And then you mentioned that you are starting to make policy recommendations, and you mentioned that you had made one to the mayor's office. Are you making these policy recommendations to the council as well? And going forward, I know you, in your report, you mentioned that you had 8 recommendations. Are those policy recommendations, or like basically what are your future plans regarding that in terms of informing both the mayor and the council?
So Alicia Yass is our legal counsel. That's all she does is write policy recommendations. We do it now. We've been fully staffed for the last year. Previous to last year, we had a lot of turnover in the office, but 5 to 6 policy recommendations in general each year on specific trends, but then we also have all kinds of other things that we make policy recommendations on, like the use of force report. We also monitor the protests, and if we see some recommendations in there, we'll make a separate report that's not in the normal policy recommendation reports and what we see in the Metropolitan Police Department's interaction with protesters. So our main job outside of investigating misconduct is to make policy recommendations when we see trends in operations from the Metropolitan Police Department, the DC Housing Authority Police Department. So some of the ones that we've done over the years, we've seen a 25% consistent trend of language and conduct allegations. 25% of most cases, of most of our cases, is always language and conduct. And so we analyze some of what we're seeing in those trends. We put out recommendations on what we think, if MPD put in place, would minimize the opportunity for people to complain about language and conduct. Like I said, we did the consent search. We saw a lot of cases where MPD or the DC Housing Authority wasn't asking for consent, and they stopped and frisked someone, and if they did and complied with these questions and followed this procedure that we put out, it would be applicable to their rules and their general orders, but it would also give them the opportunity to collect the data that we talked about. We also did a policy recommendation for updating their policies. Alicia did a huge review of all of MPD's general orders and policies and procedures. Most of them are 10 to 30 years, I was gonna say 30, 10 to 30 years outdated. And one of the things that we always recommend to MPD is for them to be an accredited police force. They are not an accredited police force now. They could be certified by the International Chiefs of Police, which you'd think for the nation's capital that would be something that we could strive for. And so updating their policies and procedures and general orders would allow them to have another foot ahead towards accreditation with International Chiefs of Police certification.
What does accreditation entail that they're not doing now? I can't believe they're not accredited.
They're not accredited.
What would they have to do? I mean, do you know specifically what they're not doing to get that accreditation?
There's a couple different services that provide accreditation. The International Chiefs of Police, there's an organization called CALIA that also does accreditation. It basically requires that policies and procedures be up to date, that there be a policy in place to review policies and procedures at a set increment of time. There are some best practices that those policies need to incorporate in order to be accredited, and then there's also training requirements that are required for accreditation. Now, MPD is, of course, doing some of these things in bits and pieces on their own. That is true. They have not done it in a systematic way that would get them accreditation, nor have they done it through an accrediting body who would come in and review everything to provide that accreditation.
I just have to say that really surprises me, considering of all the federal agents that have strict guidelines that our police department isn't up to date on that stuff. That's crazy.
Correct. So as part of the recommendation on updating the policies and procedures was to keep in mind accreditation and seek accreditation when updating those policies and procedures.
Of course, accreditation is an option. It's not a requirement. So we just help them. We just make suggestions to help them be better.
So which cities are? Which cities?
Oh, I don't know.
If you go to the websites of CALIA, C-A-L-E-A, or the International Chiefs of Police, they'll list them. CALIA has a pretty robust list that does include several of the major cities that we would compare Washington, D.C. to.
I have a question getting back to the NEAR Act.
Sure.
So I just want to clarify something. So if I were to go through all the requirements in the NEAR Act and list out all the pieces of data that are supposed to be collected, they're all the responsibility to be collected by MPD. Is that correct?
That is not correct. There are some other types of data and studies that were supposed to be done. There's supposed to be a community trust survey or a community poll. And I think the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council was supposed to collect that information and develop that study. However, that hasn't been funded by the city. And so there are other requirements in the NEAR Act for crime prevention, crime adjudication, things like that, that don't apply to MPD or our office. Some of them have not been funded yet. And so if you partner...
Has been collected so far has been through MPD. The other agencies that were supposed to be collecting things, no funding has been enacted to enable them to collect that.
I can't say that because we were fully funded on the parts that we needed. For example, we had this new use of force requirement, this new PWC requirement, and Mr. Tobin went to the council and said, we're more than happy to do that, but we're a staff of 23, or at the time we were 22. And so we asked for an additional research analyst. I mean, we have attorneys, investigators, and admin staff. And so we asked for a research analyst of the council and the mayor, and they gave us that research analyst in FY17 to get this work done. I know the council was talking to a lot of the agencies about the parts that they did fund it and where they're at. Another huge part of the NEAR Act was the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. And so they're getting up and running, doing the things that they're supposed to do. And I know that their requirements are due by the end of FY18.
Are you going to be responsible for analyzing that data as well?
No, the data that I talked to you about is the only data that we're responsible for. We're not responsible for all the data in the NEAR Act. We're responsible for the use of force data, the BWC data, and like I said, we're reporting it more often than required. Those are the two new requirements for us. Everything else that we report is in our annual report. We talk about how many complaints, how fast we do the complaints, how much we see, the types of allegations, the resolutions. We also try to report on the discipline that happens with the officers. But again, all the data comes from MPD, but we do have those reporting requirements. So we're only responsible for the ones that I told you about, but we have been funded to do those, and so far we've been successful in meeting our reporting requirements. But there are others, there's tons of others. The NEAR Act is a huge bill about crime prevention, prevention and advocacy for the city to have a better handle on crime. So we're just one small component of that. MPD does have a part of it, but there are other agencies.
If you were to make a guess, how many different agencies are responsible for the analysis of the data?
Almost every agency in the public justice and safety cluster had a part in the NEAR Act, and so the Deputy Mayor, Kevin Donahue, for Public Safety and Justice, his performance hearing was ours, reporting on all the agencies that he's responsible for and where they're at in the NEAR Act. So it is a very complex crime bill, and it's a very well-written bill, but it does have a lot of moving parts. And if it works, I think Kevin McDuffie was the drafter of it, or the initiator of it, and I think it's a very good bill. It takes a lot to get it in place, and so each of us, at least our office, is doing what we can to make sure that we meet those requirements. And then two, help others do so, and most immediately we're helping MPD with recommendations so that they have the data to report on it easier rather than not easy.
Last question.
No, as many as you have.
Anybody else has any?
I want the truth to be told.
Do you make any comparisons with other jurisdictions on use of force data?
Oh, so on use of force. We do. You'll see in the last couple pages of the use of force report, I know we compare it to Milwaukee. I think we compare, I can't remember the other ones, but there's 4 other jurisdictions that we compare it to. I should have looked at it today, but I thought I knew everything in it. There's 4 other jurisdictions that the research analyst and I compared it to that are kind of comparable in size, diversity, and composition of the city, and about the same size of force, to let you know the comparisons of our use of force versus those other jurisdictions. We are actually lower than those other jurisdictions in comparison of kind of same factors. And the fact that our data, the data that we were provided shows that MPD increased by 36%. To be fair to them, we don't know this for sure because we don't have the data, but from what we see, they had more interactions last year as well. The population has grown over the year, and and they changed their data reporting requirements. So they may be just reporting more data. We don't know the analysis of that because we don't have that information, but again, if they comply or can get to implementation of the 8 recommendations that we made, we think it will be in a good place so we can start looking into the background of why these numbers are what they are instead of just being able to report the numbers.
Just introduce yourself as well.
Yes, I'm sorry I spoke without introducing myself. My name is Alicia Yas, and I am legal counsel at the Office of Police Complaints.
What was your last name?
Yas, Y-A-S-S.
Thank you, Alicia.
So I don't know how many attorneys MPD has, but we have 1.
Yes. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate you talking about what you're doing. And thank you for the use of force report. That was, I was really excited to see that. I think it's going to be a really useful tool for assessing where MPD is and, opportunities for improvement like that. I noticed, again, I think as you mentioned, that MPD also posted their stop and frisk data. What I got from your presentation, and I'm just going to verify this, is that they're responsible for collecting that data. There were some pieces of data required in the NEAR Act that are not present in that stop and frisk data. And they're also responsible for that. It's more of again, it goes into more of the searches with concerns area. So, do you have any idea what their work is and their progress is on collecting that data?
So no, because no one knew they were going to put that out. No one knew that they were working on putting out that data. If I remember right, they put it out on February 2019 without publication, marketing, anything like that. And so we weren't able to touch base with them. We do have opportunities to work with them. Alicia talks with the staff and the legal people all the time. And it's kind of not something MPD is talking about, but it's a huge thing that the council and the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice are talking about. And so we still have another round of hearings in the budget hearings, which even though it's budget, we talk about performance because performance drives budget. And so I know we're all waiting to see what further explanation there is provided in any, if any, at the budget hearings. We haven't been asked, so we're looking at it independently on our own as we do anything that MPD does to see if we can make some recommendations. But we're kind of being cautious at this point because we don't know if there's more to come. It is retroactive, it's 2015 and prior, whatever that serves. But we are being cautious to see what the plan is because we don't know if this is going to be every year in March or February or if it's just for this is what they have now and we're going to have something else at the end of the year. And then two, we're waiting to see if there's a more robust explanation on the plan collection information. We don't know how it was collected. So we're starting to get back into, we're working on our mid-year report and then we're starting to, my research analyst and I are starting to get back into collecting the use of force data. And so I believe we're going to wait till after the budget hearings to see if any of those interactions help MPD focus on the stop and frisk data for next year, whatever the next reporting time frame is.
Just to, I have some question and another question, is that okay?
Could you speak up, though?
Sure, sorry. So is...
Could you go to the microphone?
Oh, sorry. So is the term stop and frisk an actual official term that MPD uses? That was unclear during Commander Cushman's report.
I'm sorry, stop and frisk are legal terms. There's the legal definition of a stop and the legal definition of the frisk. Again, as Rochelle said, we have not been privy to how the information that went into the stop and frisk report was collected. So my assumption would be that they're using the legal definition of stop and the legal definition of frisk, but if they have expanded it to some other parameters, we have not been made aware.
And then the last one is just, once you get data from MPD, whether it's the data that you have now or an expanded data set later, do you also, I assume you would make recommendations on further training and things like that? Because I know some of the NEAR Act requirements involved expanding the training. So you would be maybe involved in recommendations about that?
So our recommendations really run the gamut. As Rochelle mentioned earlier, all of our past recommendations that we've made are up on our website, policecomplaints.dc.gov. There's a tab for policy right at the top. So recommendations that we've made have involved, updating general orders. They've involved training. They've involved better information giving to the public. It's involved recommendations to the council on statutory changes that could have been made. We really have broad discretion in what we recommend.
I do want to follow up to that because you asked about recommendations to the mayor. One of the recommendations we made to the mayor last year was on Inauguration Day activities by MPD with the First Amendment Assembly participants. We did make a recommendation to the mayor that we thought it would be beneficial for the city to hire an independent reviewer to look at those actions. And the city did give us funding to get an independent consultant. And so that review is under review now, and hopefully we'll have it by June 30th. So I did not answer that question, but I did want to follow up to answer.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. This was very informative and helpful.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, Jerry, the next issue is also yours, I think.
Thanks. At our last meeting, I introduced a resolution in support of the March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C. on March 24th. And at that time, there were several questions that people on the commission had. And I'd like to address those questions first in terms of something that Randy found out at a recent meeting. He stopped by Gottlieb Simon's office and asked him about a couple of things that came up at our last meeting in terms of what we're allowed to be doing and what we're not allowed to be doing. And he was told that the ANC statute defines the persons to whom the ANC can offer its views. That's any district agency, the council, the mayor, the Congress, and the president. The limits are left to the ANC's discretion. The closer the issue is to the ANC, the more likely our views are to be given great weight, and that an ANC can usually frame its resolution as a directive to one of the entities that we are authorized to advise. We could also direct our resolution to the Council, Mayor, Congress, or the President to consider the aims of something that we're looking to pass a resolution on, and that we have broad discretion to address any issues that affects the district. So once he advised me of that, I went back and changed the resolution to reflect that, to reflect the questions that people brought up at that time. So the be it resolved now reads that ANC3 fully supports the call to take to the streets of Washington, D.C. and other locations for the March for Our Lives on March 24th, and we urge the mayor and council members to call on our national leaders, including the president, the vice president, and Congress, to take a firm stand to endorse the goals of the march and to demand that the lives and safety of children and others become a priority, and that we end all gun violence and mass shootings in our schools, playgrounds, parks, and streets and elsewhere immediately. So that's the revised resolution.
Okay. First of all, is there a second to the resolution? And we can just talk about it. Okay, Jerry's second. Okay, now, any comments? Becky?
Yeah. Again, I want to say I support the march wholeheartedly. I don't see any change in this resolution. We're asking people to support it, but we're not giving them an actionable thing to do. I still think it has to be directed to the council or somebody to revisit the gun legislation or something else. Just to say we support it is like an empty resolution. What are we asking them to do? All they have to do is say, oh, we support it. That's not really taking any action. I think we need to have something actionable and something that we can really influence with the greatest weight we can. Congress isn't going to listen to the ANC. I think it should be directed to the council and give them something that they should do, that we want them to take some action in a specific means, not in a general theological kind of resolution that you wrote. I think it's a great idea to support the march, but I think it has to be more specific.
Let me just respond on one thing. I think it is specific now. Asks the mayor and the council to call on our national leaders to do these things. I think that's a significant thing.
But to do what?
To call on them to take a firm stand to endorse the goals of the march.
A firm stand can say, I support it firmly. I think it still needs to be more specific. That everything we support usually is we support the application, we support this. That's not what we're supporting anything.
We ask Congress to support the goals of the march.
I can't approve it.
What legislation has that been voted on in the DC City Council? Has that been signed by the mayor? Maybe the voters can.
No, so far as I know, it's not been taken up.
She introduced it.
Yeah. Maybe she introduced it.
But it's not been taken up.
But so to Becky's point, would it adding in that we urge the DC Council to vote on and vote on this legislation? That would be pretty specific action.
To vote on what legislation?
So
that's not my resolution. If you want to bring up another resolution like that, but that's not the resolution. If you look at the goals of the march, it's not just talking about bump stock legislation. If we want to add to this all assault weapons, if we want to add to this all the other things that are stated in the goals of the march, I'd be happy to add that. I'd be happy to add many more things that I believe in, but just bump stock that's not even part of the goals of the march.
No, but you have to, address legislation or something to just say, we want to support the goals. What goals? I mean, I think it needs to be addressed and more specific and something legislative or something to just say we support and make our children safe. That could mean anything. That 20 million different people could mean different things. I think we're watering down our great weight by not being more specific.
I would also, that maybe one other, let me back up. The reason I mentioned bump stocks was not to replace what's currently in there, but to add to it, so that it would say that, in addition, this is something very specific in the DC area. And then secondly, there's another potential possibility is there is currently a concealed carry law in DC, and a number of people, I think I read in the Washington Post, about 800 people have applied to carry weapons in a concealed fashion in the district. And so we could also, another possibility would be urging the city council to review that legislation in some ways. So that would be another potential thing to discuss. I think that in addition to putting it outward to the Congress and the President and the Vice President, saying that this council, this city, there's specific action they can take that would be beneficial to saving people's lives.
I was going to say I would agree with both recommendations that are made thus far, adding that asking the council to review legislation regarding the matter. I think that would add. I support the goals of the resolution, and I appreciate that you brought it up because it's an issue that the country is currently discussing, and I believe it's important. So I do support the march as well, and I would support your amendment if you add those provisions in terms of urging both the mayor and the council to review both current legislation and to consider new legislation safeguarding our citizens when it comes to gun ownership.
Personally, I'd be happy to add not to review legislation, but to enact legislation.
Review, consider, enact, we can consider the verbs that we want.
Because people can review things all they want.
Right, review, consider, and enact.
I'd use the word enact, and I'd include bump stocks, assault weapons. I'd include the concealed carry law, the one that Marco Rubio is trying to overturn for DC, as he talks about things that he cares about in Florida. So I'd be happy to add those things, but we should do this right here and right now, so we'll just come up with some words for that.
I think we all support doing it right now, and thank you for bringing it up and thanking everyone for their recommendations, because I support the initial language that you have, but I also support adding review. And the reason I mentioned review was just because there may be, or there are current laws on our books that the council may or may not have looked at. So in general, I will support enacting, but also reviewing.
Maybe what we need to do is focus on the limits, enacting legislation to the limits of restrictions on guns consistent with the Second Amendment, consistent with court decisions interpreting the Second Amendment.
Well,
I believe the Second Amendment.
I wouldn't vote on that.
Well, okay, we can be more specific.
Let's say assault rifles.
Assault.
Well, if we want in here where it says to take a firm stand to endorse the goals of the march, and in addition, we're including ban on bump stocks, assault weapons. What was the word that you wanted? Concealed carry.
You can say, but not limited to, including but not limited to, because that would include the specific types of guns that you're talking about here, but also not limit the council to things that our ANC may not know about in terms of statistically dangerous weapons.
So if we were to say...
All of them are statistics, but...
So if it said, and in addition to include but not be limited to a ban on bump stocks, on assault weapons, and just looking for the right words dealing with the concealed carry.
Yeah, I'm not familiar enough with that legislation to offer really a clear idea of what I would want the council to do with it, to be perfectly honest. I do think with the bump stock piece, though, I think we could add a separate line that says we urge the DC Council to take up legislation introduced by the mayor to ban bump stocks and to pass said legislation. And that's very specific.
Oh, in addition to the other line that was mentioned.
Right, I mean, I think...
Stocks and assault weapons and...
No, bump stocks
an attachment to, no, not just, you can convert rifles into assault weapons with the addition of a bump stock. Right.
I think the reason I'm calling out bump stock specifically is my understanding is that there's a specific piece of legislation that potentially could be voted on, and we are saying that we want that specific piece of legislation to be passed.
Right, and I don't mean to speak for the mayor, but I believe when that came up, talked about how she wanted that to put Congress on the spot. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
Right. So it's more, it had a multi-purpose. It wasn't just to ban bump stocks, but it was to put Congress on the spot for messing with our own laws.
The mayor also recently wrote an op-ed.
Can you talk louder? I'm sorry.
I mean, the mayor wrote an op-ed. So in regards to Rubio and some of the other pieces of legislation, because Rubio's bill would legalize assault weapons and high-capacity magazines and allow guns in D.C. schools. So that was specifically for D.C. that he wrote, and her op-ed was against Rubio's decision to introduce that bill.
It was directly to his constituents in the Miami area, which contradicts what he's saying to his constituents in Florida.
So he's saying the complete opposite in Florida, but he's trying to enforce something
here.
So wouldn't we want to support the mayor?
Absolutely.
Just
So
throwing that out there.
support the mayor and what you said in the op-ed, right?
So it's in the Miami Herald.
Or what? Yeah.
Was it op-ed in the Miami Herald?
Yeah, so she wrote it directly for the Florida base of his constituents.
So we should use language from that.
Yeah.
To support the mayor, yeah.
We'll forward it to you right now.
Okay.
And she had in there, she addressed bump stock, she addressed high-capacity magazines.
Yes.
I don't know if she addressed assault weapons, but I think only in terms of in schools. That's correct.
Well,
Yeah,
well,
we can send it to you now.
Okay.
Exactly.
So more or less, where we are right now is, and in addition, to include but not be limited to a ban on bump stock, on assault weapons, on high-capacity magazines, to support the mayor and to ask the mayor and the council to review and enact legislation on.
No, get review, to enact it. So
Okay,
don't
that's.
give them two choices.
I only wanted the enact. I was just putting reviewing for.
I guess to me the question becomes, if you take out review, right, like to me, to back it up, if currently there are laws on the books in DC. So that's my only reason that I would want to encourage them to do that as well, because there are laws that are currently on the books that may help our citizens, but there are laws that we can enact that would help our citizens. So that's the only reason I'm using that particular term.
We're not saying review or
Yes.
enact, we're saying review and enact.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
So one more time, and we'll look at the exact wording, but it's, and in addition to include but not be limited to a ban on bump stocks, high-capacity magazines, assault weapons, and to review and enact legislation on these and other, to these and related gun legislation.
I think, in my opinion, we should put to support the mayor in her opposition or whatever she has in that thing for that. Because we're putting the mayor then at the beginning instead of at the end, because we want to support our mayor. So I think it should probably, support her in this you know, ban she wants or this legislation she wants on bump stocks, the high capacity. Because otherwise you're doing it after the fact and she kind of gets lost. I think she should be more front and center.
Yeah, I don't think you need to do the related stuff either.
Okay.
You just have those three, those are the major items.
Well, the conceal and carry is another one. Mhm. So that's the fourth one. Okay. And it's more than, by stating this, we are supporting the mayor, but it's more than just supporting the mayor, because we'll have to look at that exactly, but she does address specifically just schools in terms of some of those things. And we're talking, this is broader than just schools. We're talking about anything that's going on in DC, on the streets or elsewhere. So with those changes that way, does that address everybody's concerns? Resolve that ANC3 4G fully supports the call to take to the streets of Washington, D.C. and other locations for the March for Our Lives on March 24th, and we urge the mayor and council members to call on our national leaders, including the president, vice president, and Congress, to take a firm stand to endorse the goals of the march, and in addition, to include, but not be limited to, a ban on bump stock, high-capacity magazines, assault weapons, conceal and carry legislation, and to enforce our current laws and to enact needed new legislation.
I'm sorry, we still have to put in something about supporting our mayor. We are DC. I think it's important to have that in there.
And I think we have to be careful about the way we're using carry because the way that we're using carry con in here, because the way that I'm hearing it doesn't necessarily sound negative towards carry con.
Do you have some verbiage? Do you have some verbiage?
No, I don't.
No, but what I would suggest is that we know the gist of it, I think. I don't think there's any question about what we're voting on. I would suggest that Jerry circulate a draft, a redraft, that would be the final version, absent some changes that anybody has to make, and we'll finalize it first thing in the morning. But drafting as a committee like this is difficult.
But the mayor is taking
Action, so I think we need to support her.
I agree. We ought to mention the mayor in this too. You know, she's taking the lead on it.
It might be helpful to have just each of the things that we're supporting called out specifically in its own sentence, just because otherwise it's a little difficult to understand.
And I was going to recommend we shorten the resolution because there's a lot in there.
Let's let Jerry take a crack at drafting. And then we'll
And how do we then vote on this?
Well, we can vote on it right now, because I think we have the gist of it. It's just a matter of working out the language. Oh, okay. All right, we'll vote on it electronically then.
Just because
Okay.
we seem to be far apart on what you're talking about.
I think we're actually very close, but, and I don't think we'll have any trouble working this out.
I'll ask again, how do we then vote on it, and when do we vote on it?
We'll vote on it first thing in the morning, as soon as you circulate it, and please, everyone, get back to us immediately, not sooner.
Yeah, it's just the verbiage.
Right.
If anybody has a suggestion changing the verbiage, they ought to write it down, so we don't have to guess.
Right. She had a specific recommendation.
Actually, working on it.
Right, I'd like to get it tonight or tomorrow morning before I write anything. So let's say I'll wait until, pick a time, 10 in the morning, and whatever I have by then, I'll look to incorporate it into this. And if I don't have anything, I'll assume that the words that I read with some modification is what people are okay
You're going to
with.
send us a rewritten one tonight, because you got what we thought we should put in.
I'm just going to wait till 10 a.m. and then you'll see.
So I have to, I mean, if you want us to submit things tonight, I can.
Yes.
Okay.
Or tomorrow tomorrow morning.
Okay, so we'll just postpone a vote on this until tomorrow morning, electronically. Okay. All right, Jerry, you're still up.
Shifting gears here. Okay, is Kevin Smith here? Okay, Kevin Smith is here.
Okay, I'll just introduce this. So, last budget cycle, Kevin Smith, who's the coalition coordinator for the Working Coalition to fund the IIEP, which is the Incarceration to Incorporation Entrepreneurship Program. During the last budget cycle, they tried to get ANCs to support this to be included in the mayor's budget, and this budget cycle he's trying to do the same thing again. So Kevin is here to talk to us about this.
Testify before the council so much. I want to thank Randy and Jerry for inviting me here tonight. Just want to share with you about an initiative. We, each one of you, have a packet coming around, just some information as far as the media. That the first sheet there is our open letter to the mayor this go round, asking her for her funding support for the IIEP. And then the little flyer you have there talks a little bit about what's involved in this particular bill. So let me just give you some quick background on it. So former Councilmember Vincent Orange and Yvette Alexander introduced the bill back in 2015. We came in as community groups. I worked with the DC Region Task Force last year. This year I decided to kind of branch that effort out and get some businesses and some community organizations involved. Prior, it was a small handful of returning citizens and a couple of organizations pushing the effort to get them involved. So we established a working coalition to fund the IIEP. So we went from the DC Region Task Force, which is still out there, they've been around for a while, to the working coalition to fund the IIEP. You probably don't know, but the council passed this bill unanimously in 2016, but it was subject to appropriation. I'm sure everyone knows here that means that the bill was not funded at the time. So we worked to get it passed. It passed unanimously out of the committee. The committee was Business, Consumer, and Regulatory Affairs. Passed unanimously out of that committee. And then, as I said, it went to the full council, passed unanimously out of the full council. But as I said, it was passed subject to appropriation. So we started last year. We worked to get it passed, and we started last year to work to get it funded. We fell a little short last year. There was some funding amendments put forth by Grasso, which you may or may not know were declined. And that had some money in it for the IIEP. So we lost that effort. Now we're back again this year, asking the mayor to fund the legislation that it's already been passed. It's already law. It became law October 8th, 2016. And we're talking about the physical impact statement. As you know, each bill that comes to the council has to have an FIS. So with this particular piece of legislation, it's 4.7 over the 4-year period. Over the 4-year period, yes, 4-year financial plan. So we're talking about $1 million a year. Well, we looked at it, and we came up 50% less than that, about 2.3 over the 4-year period. And don't forget, our perspective is from a startup perspective. You know, we just want to get things started. You can go to our website, www.coalition159.com, and we have a lot of information there for you. But our main thing is to get it up and running, because the bill, if you look at it closely, you'll see that it establishes a fund. And that fund can accept donations up to 10 million. And that's how the program is run. So we're talking about philanthropic donations, we're talking about public-private donations, we're talking about sponsorship agreements, we're talking about all different types of funding mechanisms that can go in that fund that can be used to run this program. So from my perspective, the fund itself will pay for itself over time. Because as that fund increases, I would think you would have less responsibility less commitment from the government to fund the initiative. So just wanted to reach out and reaching out to ANCs. I reached out to the ANCs last year. If you see in your packet there, I presented a copy of a resolution that was done for. They did it for us last year. And I decided to reach out to the ANCs again this year to see if we can get their support on this measure. So I have open for questions. Anybody?
Did the mayor include this in her 2017 budget?
She did.
She did not?
She did not.
Was there any explanation for that?
And I'm thinking that, we all think the reason why is, I don't know if you're familiar, there's a pet project that the mayor has. It's called Aspire to Entrepreneurship, which is similar to what the IIEP is, but if you look at the differences, the IIEP is much more expansive. It will ultimately involve more individuals. It has not only the entrepreneurship piece that the Aspire to Entrepreneurship has, it has a GED component, it has an apprenticeship component, it has college courses in entrepreneurship at UDC, and most important, which the mayor's program doesn't have, which I'm sure if we have any business entrepreneurs in the house, you know that you have to have access to capital to begin a business. And we're not talking about giving money away. We have a proposed program plan that we've also put out, and any monies provided to participants will be based on a viable business plan. You can't just come in and expect to be divvied out money for no plan. And another important component of it too is for the trickle-down effect is that businesses currently owned and operated by returning citizens in the district will be able to benefit, and from the standpoint of growing their business, because we feel that as we grow businesses that are currently in existence, that will allow them to hire other individuals. I don't know if you know that recently the district has gained another title. This is not a good one, but the district has more returning citizens per capita than anywhere else in the nation. So we think that this program is not a solve all. There's various different components to a reentry strategy. I don't really know what the mayor's is at this point, but it's just an opportunity to kind of do some things for some people that are in a position where they could make a difference. So, any other questions?
So I'm wondering, what is the status for 2018? I was reading the article that you gave us here from the end of 2017. Say the bill was unanimously passed without funding. So currently the status as far as the 2018 budget?
Well, that
has not been submitted.
Right,
so
right.
What is the current in terms of, I guess, just background? Have you met with the mayor at this point? Would it get her current thoughts on this, and also any members of the council?
No.
I know council member at large, Robert White, is a great supporter of the returning citizens community. So I was just wondering, could you give us background on that?
Yeah, we haven't met with we did meet with Councilmember McDuffie, because the bill requires the Department of Employment Services and the Small and Local Business Development to take the lead in establishing the program. Former Councilmember Orange put DOES out there out front, but we're putting forth some amendments to that. We feel that the Small Local Business Development should be out front. And this is an entrepreneurship program. There's no sense having DOS involved in it. Obviously, they all work together to make it happen, but as far as the agency out front in this effort, we feel it should be a business-oriented effort. We haven't met with any councilman. Like I said, we met with Councilmember McDuffie recently, and he had expressed that that he would be pushing it through for us, but we'll have to see. you know, it passed unanimously. So, you know, it's not a matter of who supports it on the council. It's a matter of, you know, are you going to put your money, you know, where your mouth is.
Right, no, I'm not asking you
Yeah.
that, I just wanted to know.
No.
The status of it.
Yeah. So now as far as we met last year with Matthew Brown, as you may know, he's not there anymore, Budget and Finance. I think Jenny Reed is there now. We're trying to meet with Jenny Reed. She obviously is busy with the budget. I ran into Christy Whitfield, the new director over at the Small Local Business Development. We were trying to meet with her as well. So, you know, we're going to continue to pursue that route. But the bottom line, and they always tell us, is it falls on the mayor. I mean, because the mayor could fund it, and then we can go to the council. We can see whether the council, you know, agrees with that or not. Any other questions?
Let's get any other questions we have first.
Can't the council appropriate money for it?
Yeah, they can, but we have to see what the mayor's going to do first once she releases her budget on March 21st.
Yeah, but my point is, if there's nothing in there, the council can still appropriate.
Yeah, definitely. There's no doubt.
They're not precluded from doing it.
They're not precluded from doing it. Yes, ma'am.
And I apologize because I had to step out for a minute, but, so the mayor has a program in place to help train people to get back into the workforce, correct?
Yes, she does.
So this would be in addition to that?
Yes.
So this district 67,000 plus returning citizens include the people we're putting to work in other things that don't want, because this is just for entrepreneurs, right? Who want their own business?
This program? This is an entrepreneurship program. Yes.
Okay. So what kind of criteria are they going to have to meet to start their own business as opposed to getting into the workforce by other means?
Well, we're advocates, so we propose some criteria. But again, you know, we can propose all these, criteria as much as we want. I mean, it's going to be up to the agencies that's responsible for establishing to come up with. Obviously, a couple of them, no dirty urines. I mean, those are some basic things. Being a resident of the District of Columbia, that's obviously one. Having had done some time in the criminal justice system. Those are some of the basic ones.
I meant more like, is there going to be some kind of screening process? Like, do they have to write a business plan to teach them what they need to know? Because not everyone's cut out to have their own business, right?
Yes.
So you're not just going to say to the citizens abroad, anybody wants to be a business owner, come on in, we're going to fund you. So that's more what I was talking about.
Yeah, well, again, we feel the same way. Everybody's not set out to be an entrepreneur. And that's why the bill has various other components. And I think the key component along with this whole getting a person a job, we have the mentorship component there. And we see that as transformational. I'm a returning citizen myself, and I've had a mentor, Michael Lapson. He's a lawyer at Covington & Burling, a partner, and we've been in each other's pocket for a very long time. I was released in 2010, and he was there before I got released, and he's still there today, helping me through the process. And that's what the mentorship is all about. I mean, that person, we may not be able to help that person start a business, but we can tap that person into some contact we may have as a mentor to get that person a job. And we also have the character development component, character leadership. As you know, the prison mindset, quote unquote, is something a lot of people can't shake. And these are the types of soft skills we want to provide individuals. So eventually, I mean, I read an article just last week talks about how people coming out of prison are going to be more involved in the workforce as time goes on. And anything we can give, any skills we can give them, soft or hard, to help them in this process is going to benefit them in the long run. I don't know if I answered your question.
I have more of a comment. One of the other reasons that something like this I feel is very important for DC is people from DC who are incarcerated, the largest percentage in the country, those people are incarcerated further from their home jurisdiction than any other state in the country. So not only are they spread out all over the United States, which removes them from a nucleus of support that they might otherwise have if they were incarcerated closer to DC. So something like this is really something for returning citizens to help them readjust and to move on.
Plus, let me follow up on that. But the programs that we really rely on right now, you may want to take a look at. They're on our website. Is Rising Tide Capital Prison Entrepreneurship Program and the 5 Ventures. PEP specifically. It's not in the law. We made some proposed resolutions. I mean, we made some proposed amendments to the law, but this is not one of them. But PEP's program starts while a person is incarcerated. It's referred to as an inside-out approach. And that would be my suggestion. Because so many people in there, like Ray said that, it's a prison, Bureau of Prisons now, and a lot of those prisons do not have any programming. People in there just sit around doing nothing. So that would be something that, hopefully we can talk about down the road, starting something inside the prison, and as they, reintegrate back into society, they can continue that process. And that can do nothing but help a person in his job search.
Okay, Phil? Yeah, I just want to make a couple of quick points. So I just wanted to make a couple of key points. We definitely hear some of your objectives in regards to this. So in regards to the last fiscal budget, some of the main reasonings for the funding when it came across the desk were basically some of the requirements of the bill that were put in place have already been funded through existing programs. So we felt like as far as some of the funding for this particular bill, some of the placements were already in place. So Project Empowerment provides the job training, connection to GED and educational support. We have DC Career Connections that provides job training to justice-involved youth 20 through 24. We have CSOSA that works with the court diversion programs that provides employment opportunities. Those partners are OAG, DC Courts, U.S. Attorney, as well as DOES. DOES also has a division where we have 3 programs to better align those resources to support returning citizens and those seeking job opportunities. We also have the Mayor's Office on returning citizens that's led by Director Brian Ferguson, who's also a returning citizen himself. So some of those things have already been in place as far as existing, as far as programs that have been in place before. So the funding, the $4 million that was allotted in the bill, we actually provide more funding through those programs. So we felt that we already have a budget through these programs that surpassed that $4 million allotted within that bill. So it was passed by council, but at the same token, when the mayor passed her budget, no council members actually, what he mentioned kind of before, no council members again marked up in regards to some of the components in the bill. So they had the opportunity to go back and look through the budget and add those or allocate resources, and no council members did. So again, even though it was brought before us, we felt in the time that we already had some of these programs put in place, can we improve them? I'm pretty sure we can, and this fiscal budget, we'll be looking at that a little bit more. But I want to kind of clarify some points as far as some of the reasonings behind that. Also, the mayor also did change the DMV policy for returning citizens, so that way it can kind of provide more job opportunities for them. So, and we can give you that information as well.
Yeah, I think this is a great thing. I'm a mentor at many startups. I'm a mentor at many startups, or have been. I think this is a fabulous, wonderful thing. I've watched it for a number of years. Sad that it hasn't been funded. I hope it does get funded, whether we figure this out. And inside out, from a rising tide perspective, I think it's a wonderful program. I've seen it, read the statistics on it. I guess I ask you, what kind of mentor into entrepreneurship program are we really funding?
So, and that's the Aspire to Entrepreneurship Program. So it was a pilot. So going forward, they'll be putting programs in place as far as that mentorship. But we also, yeah. So, I mean, I can talk to you offline about
Yeah, I would just be, and this is not a war, this is like, we all want to get to the same place kind of thing.
I want to discuss the reasonings first, and the budget is going forward.
That's what I'm saying, based on my knowledge, it's just not there now.
You talk about the mentorship in terms of business?
Yeah.
So that's why we have to aspire to entrepreneurship.
It's a shame it's not there now, because it takes a couple years to get there. When it does get there, then you have to facilitate it even further. So sitting around year by year by year is not.
And as far as entrepreneurship has been around, it's just been coming. Can you speak into the microphone? As far as
entrepreneurship, and don't get me wrong, our position is that the space is big enough for, it's not a competing thing.
Right.
Sure. I mean, I understand, he's probably, has to defend his position at, for the government, but with more returning citizens than anywhere else in the nation, I mean, why would you not, with a $1.19 billion reserves, why would you not take some of that funding and try? I mean, if one piece of information I left with you is the governor of Illinois.
Yeah.
That's a recent individual that decided that. I mean, in the context of criminal justice reform, I'm looking at it more in the context of, workforce development strategy and reentry. But he's looking at it, as you know the situation in Chicago. He's looking at it from a criminal justice perspective. And he's decided to go this way as well. Again, over time, we'll be able to tap some funding. I'm sure the gentleman here knows we'll be able to tap some funding from the private sector. I wrote a letter recently to John Legend. I don't know if you guys seen the piece several nights ago. Clean Decisions and Mission Launch and Flick Shop, businesses in the city. John Legend was able to, through his new profit fund, give some money to, give some grants to those businesses so they can grow, their business. And that's what it's about. Because, from Scott Breeze to Will Isla, they'll tell you that they don't hire anybody but returning citizens. And that's what the need is. I'm sorry, I believe you have a question.
No, I just wanted to say, it sounds like your program also complements some of the programs that the mayor have currently been enacted. So it sounds like, as you said, that there's a space for programs like the IIEP in addition to what the city offers currently. I support your effort and commend you for your effort, and I guess one of the things you have pointed out a number of ways that it does complement it. Now, in your seeking to get additional funding, you mentioned that you're looking at a lower amount, but are you wedded to that particular amount in terms of funding? What would be the baseline, or if there's any amount of funding just to start up the startup program?
I think, like I said, last year we didn't have that. We were running around saying, Councilmember White was saying, what's the lowest? What would your ask be? But this time I was able to look at it, the various different components, the GED component, the access to capital component. For example, in the 2.3 that we came up with, we're willing to just go up to $5,000 in microloan money, whereas the bigger program goes up to $50,000. So obviously, we're ready to make some compromises there, but knowing that with the $10 million ceiling, that money is going to be in the fund over time. It's an investment. I'm sorry, ma'am.
No, that's okay. Excuse me.
My ignorance, but if we have a bill in there in place already, would it be easier to amend that program and add a mentorship branch to it, as opposed to doing a...
Well,
It has a mentorship for entrepreneurs in it?
Yeah.
I thought they said it didn't.
No, what's funded is not. Does not include it.
Oh, the funding.
What's funded is not included.
And plus,
the bill has what it needs.
Plus, it's my understanding too, and the gentleman can correct me if I'm wrong, but that the mayor has not per se funded the Aspire program. And we, in addition to that, we looked at, it was the first cohort, and we urged the council to interview the cohorts that preceded them. about, what they thought about the program. And one of the things they said is, two things that stick out to me. They say the money is not enough. I believe in one article you have, the guy talked about going through the program and not having the access to capital. And another person talked about the mentorship piece, not being, where it should be. And don't get me wrong, it's going to take people to work it and make it work. But again, we look at the mentorship piece as, like I said, it's transformational. When a person gets in your life and stays in your life, I mean, very rarely I would think you would, revert back to crime. And that's what it's all about.
Mr. Smith, I just want to say thank you very much for presenting, and I absolutely commend the work you're doing. I think it's really, really important, and I especially agree that the mentorship piece sounds like it was personally valuable for you, and I'm sure it's been valuable for many other people as well. And I just wish you the best of luck. I hope that you go where you're looking for.
Thank you. We do really appreciate that. This has been fantastic. Great.
A real quick thing, sorry, this is kind of off topic. Have you worked with SCORE? Do you know what SCORE is?
I heard of SCORE.
They're retired business owners that mentor. They have workshops and stuff, and they mentor people to help them get started in business.
Yeah, I'm gonna lead the commission with the proposed plan that we did, and we talk about in our mentorship piece. We talk about reaching out to entities like SCORE to get some really top flight people involved. That's really willing to stay along. Like I said, Mike, says I tell Mike he mentors me. Mike says I mentor him. So it's a relationship. But yeah, I'm gonna leave that for you, so you'll have that. I think that's an in-depth study of what the district hasn't seen yet in this area. Because all we did is we looked at all the other programs across the country, and we kind of took pieces and bits and kind of made it, fit DC.
What I'm going to suggest we do is this, and Mr. Smith, we're going to ask you to help us out on it as well. But since the mayor's budget is coming out on the 21st of March, if you could report back to us on the status after the mayor's budget comes out. So you tell us whether additional funding is needed. And then we will be able at that point to decide whether we need to go to the council or not. There will be budget hearings at the council, and we can then offer our views to the council if that's necessary. Yes, Phil?
We can also get a program director for ANC. He kind of spearheads the Inspired Entrepreneurship, and he can talk a little bit more about that. So he operates under DLWD, which that program runs, so he can come here. Derek Over is his name.
Okay, it sounds like what we need to do is though plan something for April to readdress this and to bring it up at a meeting in April. Does that sound right? Okay, and Mr. Smith will get back to us about his assessment of what's in the mayor's budget, and then we'll go from there and decide what we need to do with the council. Okay?
Thank you so much
yes.
for the work you're doing.
All right, the last issue on our agenda tonight is a comprehensive plan. This is a huge task, and we're coming at it sort of late in the process. But the comprehensive plan is a 20-year framework that guides future growth and development. It was originally adopted in 2006, then it was modified in 2011. It addresses a wide range of topics relating to development and how the city is going to grow. The Office of Planning has been working for almost 2 years on amending the comprehensive plan. It would update growth projections, it would plan for new challenges, and it would incorporate policies to promote inclusion and resilience. They received, they said, 3,000 comments proposing changes to the comprehensive plan, and the website, which is plandc.dc.gov, has a tremendous amount of information there on all of the comments that were made and all the proposals that have been made and everything. The first portion of that plan is really the only thing that's seen the light of day yet. That's the framework element. And it was submitted to the council January 8th. as the Comprehensive Plan Amendment Act of 2018, and it contains the background for the remainder of the plan and defines key terms that would be important in interpreting the rest of the plan. So it's really important. It sets, as I said, suggests, it sets the framework. When passed, the law will control the future growth and development of the district. So it's pretty important. And the Council's Committee of the Whole will hold a hearing March 20th at 1 p.m. in room 500. And I expect they're going to have a load of witnesses there. There are going to be a lot of people who are going to testify. There are several pieces on the web that you can look at to see the various points of view. There are some people who are generally oppose greater density or growth in residential neighborhoods and criticize the proposal because it would remove certainty about the range of authorized future development in the city. Others applaud the elimination of language that protected existing residential neighborhoods from any significant development, and they believe that the modifications will promote affordable housing. That's sort of the opposite point of view. And they urge the council to go even further in that regard and prioritize affordable housing and to address displaced residents, which are certainly things that are not completely addressed in the framework element. Other groups address the comprehensive plan from the perspective of economic, racial, and environmental justice. Then there are the developers who are praising the proposed amendments because they believe it will make clear that the descriptions of land use categories in the plan's future land use map should serve as general guidelines rather than strict rules. So there are a whole bunch of varied opinions about this proposed framework element. I have been through the whole thing, and I tried to pick out a few things that are particularly relevant to our neighborhood that we might think about. One is in section 213.4, and it adds Wisconsin Avenue and Connecticut Avenue to the list of locations with, quote, underutilized sites that tend to be clustered along mixed-use corridor streets. That would imply that those would be areas for greater development along the corridor of Connecticut Avenue, which affects us, obviously. Section 215, well, we don't know because this is only the framework element. It will be specified in further elements that are to come.
Well, does that mean upgrade or downgrade some of the zoning that already on Connecticut Avenue?
In the comprehensive plan, they could say that these are areas designated for more intensive development. That's what they could say. Yes, they could say that.
Yeah, the plan was pretty obvious in my reading. They were looking for more denser development along Connecticut Avenue. I mean, just think of our neighborhood where you have commercial area where you only have 1 2-story buildings maximum. They mentioned that. They mentioned that as a problem. That should be changed. There's other parts of Connecticut Avenue where we have townhouse.
We fought for that R1 zoning for up here, and we fought for that.
Well, let's wait on this out. There are some other things in there that indicate that they are moving in certainly in the direction of greater development. And but some things that indicate to the contrary. For instance, section 215.20, which is table 2.3, projects increases in the number of households in each planning area until 2045. And the lowest percentage projected growth is for Rock Creek West, which is the area that we're in. It's only 4.2% projected growth. So that would indicate that they're not really expecting this area to have a lot more population. Another indicator is that the increases in employment, which is in section 215.21, those projected increases by 2045 are again the lowest in Rock Creek West, only 2.7%. So they're really not expecting growth in population or employment in this area. And that would suggest to me that they're certainly not going to come out now with a plan that's going to have a lot greater density for both residential and commercial.
They made the statement that they wanted to
Well, no, they've said that those were underutilized areas. But that doesn't necessarily, I mean, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell from this.
When I looked at it, I wondered about that low number in the statistics, and I could not determine how they were able to determine that rate of growth. Was there, I mean, it was huge, it was a lot to look at, but I did notice the numbers. There was a higher projected growth in, say, Northeast, which they said was 19%, where here, it was 4.2.
Right.
When we have corridors that are similar, if not busier. I just didn't understand how they came to those numbers or percentages.
I don't know that that's clear as to
Right.
how they're projected the growth in each of those individual sections. Let me just highlight a couple of other things. In the future land use map, this is in section 2025.1, that map, in the current language, it says the map expresses public policy for future land use. But the proposed amendment would say that the map generally depicts public policy for the future land use across the city and is intended to be used in concert with the comprehensive plan policies and actions, as well as direction from approved small area plans. So basically they're saying, giving a lot more flexibility. They're saying, this is the map, but don't take it as gospel. It can change based on the overall comprehensive plan or whatever else the zoning commission comes up with. The definition of low-density residential, which is the area we live in, is basically low-density residential, currently provides that this designation is used to define the district's single-family neighborhoods. Single-family detached and semi-detached housing units with front, back, side yards are the predominant uses. That language will be stricken, and it's replaced with, this designation is used to describe areas suited generally, but not exclusively, for residential neighborhoods characterized by single-family detached and semi-detached housing units with front, back, and side yards. So it's giving a lot more flexibility again for the possibility of change. Similarly, in section 2226.1, the generalized policy map and the future use map are again intended to provide generalized guides, but it says for development and conservation decisions and are to be considered in concert with other comprehensive plan policies. Again, more flexibility that they're building in. So each step, there are just a number of instances of this throughout the framework element where they are building in more flexibility and essentially giving more latitude to the zoning commission to make decisions as to how things get implemented. So it's very difficult for us to come in at this stage after it's been out there, people have been working on it for 2 years. I don't know how we're going to do anything that's going to be significant, but the one area that I think we might think about is the possibility of suggesting to the council, when they look at this, that this kind of flexibility that they built in is not helpful, and that the comprehensive plan should be the same kind of comprehensive plan and directive document that it has been in the past, rather than providing too much flexibility and essentially leaving it up to the zoning commission to make the decision. Now Peter Shapiro, former commissioner here, is on the zoning commission now, so I've got a lot of confidence in Peter, but I don't know that I want to just turn things over to the zoning commission on this. Let's hear from the commissioners first, and then we'll hear from the community. Chris.
My only comment is that, flexibility in development is usually something that developers take advantage of to make money. And just like the 5333 Connecticut developer used, the PUD process to make it, well, they used the expiration of a PUD, of a former PUD, which was, to me, was quasi-legal, because they said, they didn't have to go through the PUD process because 10 years had gone by, which to me was rather strange. And they used vagaries in the building height rules where you can measure the height on one street setback on another street. And so there are all these, so the minute you make the plan fuzzy, people are going to start taking advantage of it, and it's not going to be, it's not going to be the poor people, it's going to be the rich, plugged-in people that are going to come in and make, make a lot of money and maybe do some benefits on the side. But I don't know. I'm with you, Randy. I think the plan should be more prescriptive. Not against providing ways for the city to get larger and ways to get more inclusive in income distribution of the residents. But I just think making the plan fuzzy is not a good idea.
One thing that I noticed in some of the documentation that I read, and as a statistician, this stuff jumped out at me, is that there's not a consistent projection model that's used with a common set of data. They used a different data that they wanted to draw different conclusions. And the projection models really aren't stated how they were developed or anything else. So, it's very easy to come up with an analysis that helps one way or another based on what kinds of projection models that you use. And most places would use one and perhaps give alternatives using different kinds of projection models. And that can be done on population growth, economic growth, or anything else that they wanted to do. So it's not calling it fuzzy math, but it's very precise way of using the data to justify certain positions.
Yes, and I would actually support that as well, because it wasn't clear. And if I, as an ANC commissioner, was new to this and trying to figure things out, allowing them to go forward and use this framework when you haven't actually defined how you did your analysis and came up with your numbers, I think it does a disservice to our area, ANC3 4G, which is within that Rock Creek West definition that was put forward. And then I would also add, too, I would continue to add, while giving the zoning commission certain flexibility, we can continue to push for ANCs having great weight in it within, I know procedurally they're going to have more hearings on different sections, but just to continue to emphasize within these changes that we continue to have continued voice.
Let me just mention, Gottlieb Simon has distributed an opinion by the was the DC Council or the Attorney General. Somebody has given a legal opinion anyway, that the Office of Planning does not have to give great weight to the ANC's views with regard to the comprehensive plan. It's very explicit, and so Office of Planning can basically thumb their nose at us. Gottlieb has proposed a modification to the law that would be able to give us the great weight authority again. But that's not going to be passed anytime soon, I'm sure. So as of this moment, Office of Planning does not have to give great weight to anything the ANCs say. But the council does. And so, I mean, this is now before the council, and so we can certainly give our opinions to the council, and they are entitled to great weight there.
One question. So I was reading the section reference to underutilized sites, and it seems that the definition is changing from areas where the properties are low assessed values to areas where more could be built based on what the zoning allows for. But there's also a caveat that says this does not necessarily mean that these uses should be displaced. It simply means that the private market will create pressure to replace them over time. And so I guess my question, or the thing I'm wondering is when you define an area as underutilized in this plan, what is that? What are the implications of that? What happens then? And that's unclear to me.
Okay, yes.
Hi, I'm Linda Schmidt. I've lived here since 1947. So I've seen a lot of changes on areas that haven't because apparently they've been working on it for 2 years behind the black curtain. And I deeply resent the fact that it appears that developers are now running the city. I shared this information with the former city manager, who generally refrains from getting into anything. And he came to my house and he said, this should concern us. This is developer money sloshing around City Hall. I think that the ANC should have great weight. It is a mechanism of our democracy. I remember when 3 Southern white commissioners ran the city. It was people not from us who ran us. It looks to me like the developers are wanting to take on that role. I think I would absolutely support Mr. Speck, your comments, Shonda, Ms. Tucker, your comments, Chris, your comments. All these comments that say this is total baloney. I think that the mayor, in concert with the developers, is trying to short circuit our democratic process. I'm infuriated that we have to go back to the battlefield to simply try to protect our input to the development of the city.
My name is Laura Fennessy. I lived in D.C. for almost 20 years. A couple of years ago, when the Office of Planning tried to roll back the Hyde Act, you may remember that, I was involved in those meetings which were held over the summer. And it was very clear then, and I see the same thing now, is they were, instead of looping in the citizens, they really wanted to loop out the citizens. They had the hearings in August. There was, against the objections of Peter May from the Department of the Interior. It was on record saying, you don't do this, everybody's out of town. When they had their meetings, OP had about 200 different slides that they showed of how the city would look. There was not one slide of a home, how a home would look next to these greater heights. It was all, the grand avenues, the boulevards, what they would look like, but nothing what your house would look like with a 90-foot apartment behind it, not one. They were not able to answer any questions about who would pay for the needed changes to infrastructure. That, with increased development, our system is barely able to hang on as is. They weren't able to talk about where we would put schools. They weren't able to talk about green space. What they did talk about, and when they went to Congress, Mr. Gandhi had a testimony that he gave orally, but what he presented in writing was different. And he said that he asked in writing that when the zoning be abolished and that all properties be taxed at their highest and best use. He did not say that orally, it was not picked up in the paper. But when I went through and read that testimony, I thought, my God, they could tax our properties as if we have a big skyscraper on them or something, OP also spoke really dismissively of neighborhoods like ours. I remember Harriet Tregoning was sitting there, she's like, and those neighborhoods up in the Northwest, they are just dead at night. I was like, yeah, that's how I like it. I don't want to hear bars, I don't want to hear disco, I want to hear the crickets. Somebody's dead is another person's tranquil, and I think right now the city offers something to everybody. You can go bar hopping or you can go sleep, it's your choice. But they seem to want to force a vision of a 24-hour hip vibe onto other areas. And we're really unconcerned that they would be getting rid of these almost like little villages within a city that are our special neighborhoods. I'm really concerned about the removal of all these protections. I think even as it stands now, the zoning attorneys and the developers get so much leeway. When they do a PUD, let's say they're allowed to build 5 apartments by zoning. They'll put in for 10. And then with the like places like behind the Cathedral Commons where 2D police station is, that lot was declared lacking in residential character. The developers' lawyers asked for that so that they could do away with the protections that would normally apply to a residential street. And I would be very concerned about that. If you live on what you think is a residential street and somebody declares it lacking in residential character, you've just lost your investment. And I'll just end with one thing. I had a friend who went before the zoning commission about a garage he wanted to put. He lives over in Barnaby Woods. And he's an extremely tasteful person. He's, just a beautiful yard, and I know it would be great, but they would not let him put an office on top of his garage because of the setback issue. And he said that one of the commissioners, the zoning commissioners, came out of that hearing. I'll call my friend Bob, because I won't give it away, but he said, Bob, just come back in a few months and you can build whatever you want.
And I want to thank Ellen Beach for protecting this commercial neighborhood. I remember the story.
And give Chris the credit for protecting the townhouses down further down where somebody wanted to build apartments there. They started in the ANC help. We used the former comp plan as an excuse. We said low density to get it down zone just enough to put it over the park. That's where comp plan came from beginning of.
The comprehensive plan was a foundation for our arguments on zoning. It was what protected us. Everything would have been smoke if we hadn't been able to point to the comprehensive plan and say, this is what we are arguing for, following the plan. And this new thing makes the plan just whisper away. No protection.
So Randy, you're already signed up to testify. So what would you like from us to help you with that?
I would like to draft testimony along the lines that we've just discussed tonight. It's got to be done by the 20th, and hopefully I could get it done by the 16th, because then it could get to council members before the hearing on the 20th. And it's got to be short, because they don't even allow the 5 minutes for if you're representing an agency to do that. Yeah.
You can make the actual testimony extended as long as...
Oh, yeah, I know. You can make that as long as you want, but you can only talk for, I think it's going to be, I think maybe 4 in this instance.
I think I saw this.
Maybe it's 3. Not very long. That goes by really quick too.
Yeah.
So what I would like to do is draft something, circulate it quickly to everybody here. If you eye off on it, then we'll go forward, and I'll submit the testimony. Who knows? Like I said, there are going to be a lot of people there, and I did get a position on the list some time ago, so maybe I'll be fairly high on the list, but it's going to be a zoo, I suspect. Lots and lots of people. Okay? Well, is that satisfactory? Okay. I will do that. Okay. Thank you all. Okay. The minutes for our February 26th meeting were posted on our website and on the listserv. Any modifications or changes anyone wants to make? All those in favor of adopting the minutes? 7-0. Okay. Checks, Chevy?
Checks presented this month are $648.94 for Commissioner Mollis for the ANC equipment on the microphones, and $129 even to Commissioner Mollis to reimburse for the survey program. Question? Yes. Those are the only two we have.
All in favor?
6th meeting. I know at least 2 of us, Abe and I are going to, 3, I think. You'll be out too? Okay, that's going to be 3 of us. Anybody else out? You're not going to be here. Okay, what? That's today. This very day. We do have a meeting. We had a meeting. Okay, so we will not have a forum then on March 26th. And I don't think there's anything that's urgent anyway. And so we will just meet again. Our next meeting will be on April 9th. And I've already got a number of things for that meeting. Most significantly probably is the presentation by DC Water and DDOT about Oregon Avenue. That is important. I'm sure Paul Hoffman will be here, but I have no idea from DC Water. I'm sure it'll be someone from DC Water too.
I know she would be coming, and the project manager, I can't remember his name. She mentioned another for Wade. I guess the gentleman who had been with you was out in the field.
Yeah. And okay, so we will not have the March 26th meeting, and we will meet on April 9th. I will start compiling, with Stephanie's help, compile a list of comments that we got for April 9th. Okay? Thank you all.